Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another eye-opening episode of Boss Economics World, where we cut through the nonsense and scrutinize the economic circus that masquerades as policymaking. Today, we've got plenty to talk about concerning the European Central Bank's, ECB, upcoming personnel overhaul, and make no mistake, this isn't just a boring game of musical chairs among suits, it's a full-blown storm that could throw Europe's economy deeper into the recession it's already stumbling through. So buckle up as we tear through the ECB's reality show and the backdrop of a looming economic disaster. So, first things first. It's happening. By December this year, 7 out of the 26 ECB interest rate setters will be replaced. That's roughly a quarter of the ECB's decision-making bench, poof, gone, out of the game. Big names like Klaus Knot, who's been around so long I thought they were going to name a building after him, are leaving. He's one of the more experienced hawks, notorious for not being shy about his stance during critical times. Plus, a few other economic heavyweights, including those who battled through the Eurozone's nasty debt crisis, are making their exit. Frankly, with inflation still riding high and economies crumbling left and right, now is when Europe needs these veterans most. The timing couldn't be worse. Inflation in the Eurozone is still sky-high, stubbornly refusing to behave like everyone hoped it would. And just as these ECB departures roll in, brace yourself for the cherry on top, a possible trade war ignited by good old Uncle Sam, led by Donald Trump, yes, that Donald Trump, eager to slap tariffs on Europe's fragile economies. I hope you've got your popcorn ready because this is economic chaos straight out of a Hollywood drama. Now, before we fly off into a hurricane of mixed metaphors, let's pause and reflect on what these replacements mean. One of the clearest concerns is the balance between the ECB's hawks, policymakers who want stricter measures like higher interest rates, and its doves, the more dovish lot who prefer looser monetary policy, which usually benefits borrowers more. With so many personalities leaving, including well-known hawks like Klaus Knot and Austria's Robert Holzmann, the newcomers could swing the balance either way. And with hawks usually pushing for tighter policies, you've probably heard them lecturing about fighting inflation by raising rates. Some fear that an influx of rookies may wobble and sway with new political winds, making all of us the guinea pigs in their trial-and-error experiments. What's really worrying, though, is not just the replacement of experienced hawks but also the possibility of switching in clueless political puppets who've barely made monetary policy a side hobby. Take a look at Martin Kocher, Austria's labor and economy minister, who's mingling with the elites and might soon be calling the shots without us knowing what he really thinks about interest rates. Hey, if we wanted blind guesswork to steer Europe's financial course, why not let us take a crack at it? But hold your outrage there. The ever-optimistic ECB leadership shrugs off these concerns, and loyal supporters like Société Générale's Anatoly Yanenkov believe the institution will remain well protected. Oh, really? Protected from what? From Trump's tariffs crippling the European economy? From runaway inflation that's still making life harder for European households? Remember, this is the same ECB that's already under fire for somewhat botched monetary decisions over the past few years, and yet these replacements seem poised to walk right into that booby-trapped political maze. Going by Europe's recent track record, forgive me if I don't feel protected. Let's be real, Europe's biggest economic headache isn't Trump starting a trade war. Although he's likely to make it a lot worse, Europe's biggest headache is the inflation that just doesn't seem to get the memo to calm down. The Eurozone experienced a sneaky uptick in inflation in January 2025, right when experts were polishing their mission accomplished speeches. But hang on, didn't experts and media heads tell us inflation would be under control by now? Wasn't the ECB's grand plan supposed to save us? Well, think again. Inflation rose higher than expected, and now people are scratching their heads asking, why aren't prices stabilizing? It doesn't help that the economy isn't growing. Yes, you heard that right, folks, Eurozone gross domestic product, GDP, stalled at the end of 2024. That's right, the Eurozone economy didn't grow, not one single bit, which makes fighting inflation feel like battling a house fire while rain clouds gather overhead. Let's face it, stagnation plus inflation equals stagflation, that economic nightmare that Keynesian economists have nightmares about, and if you've looked out of the window at the train wreck Europe's finances are becoming, that sounds exactly where we're headed. And what does the ECB do? Well, it's still cutting interest rates, pushing the deposit rate down to 2.75% compared to a peak of 4% in mid-2024. But guess what? Despite lowering costs for borrowing, the inflation monster keeps popping its ugly head out of the closet. Businesses might find it cheaper to borrow again, hooray. But if prices keep rising faster than the government can print money, Europe's getting less bang for its policy buck. If this wasn't already chaotic enough, Europe's watching the US's inflation battle with a mix of desperation and curiosity. Europe's leadership is clearly shaking. Will Trump's new policies, most likely tariff-driven, set off the next explosion or slow economic growth even further? The man loves pushing buttons, and somehow it always ends up with Europe's industries being dragged into it. What happens when you replace seasoned veterans with fresh rookies in the middle of an economic meltdown? You guessed it, confusion. And while that might make things more entertaining for the ECB watchers, it spells trouble for the rest of us rolling through the economic roller coaster trying to make sense of everything. Take Martins Kazaks, Latvia's head honcho, whose reappointment wasn't even confirmed until after his first term expired. There were politicians who wanted to boot him before he got reappointed, but guess what? After months of chaos, they gave up, and here he is, probably doubting whether he'll last another 5 years. This limbo is more than just bureaucratic press, it means key positions aren't being filled quickly enough, increasing uncertainty in a time when Europe's financial systems need clarity and decisiveness more than ever. Then you've got José Luis Escrivá from Spain who entered the central bank's highest ranks like a silent monk, barely saying anything. Wouldn't it be nice to hear how our new leaders feel about the state of the economy before they start moving the wheels of monetary policy? Yari Sten, chief European economist at Goldman Sachs, sums it up nicely: it's not immediately clear what they stand for, which means they could secretly be hawks, doves, or, heck, maybe even indifferent pigeons. It's the kind of disorienting scenario that analysts hate because they have no real signal to go on when making decisions. It's no secret, governing institutions are facing the double-edged sword of politics. The danger isn't just that there are rookies making decisions but that more and more central bankers have political backgrounds. Take Mario Centeno from Portugal, who came from leading the Eurogroup, and Olli Rehn from Finland, a former EU commissioner. While experience in government is all well and good, too much political baggage in monetary circles puts the ECB's vaunted independence at risk. It was only last year that ECB President Christine Lagarde, who, by the way, also isn't above political pressures, reminded us all how imperative it is for central banks to exercise independence. Yeah, Christine, tell that to the new wave of political appointees coming on board. Price stability is the ECB's mission, and political considerations can only complicate decisions about interest rates, resilience measures, and inflation. In fact, make no mistake, the rumors swirling around the ECB's supposed protection from political meddling are just that, rumors. With new politicians squeezing their way into policymaking, even subtle shifts in how decisions are made, and who influences those decisions, can cause unnecessary volatility in the markets. So, don't be surprised if European stocks take unexpected plunges based on the latest whispers out of Frankfurt. Now, let's peer into the future. One debate that's likely to dominate in the coming months is the fate of the so-called neutral rate, an interest rate setting that neither heats up nor cools down the economy. Problem is, nobody agrees on where that level lies. Is it 1%, 2%, 3%? The hawks will insist it's higher, and could demand policies to reflect that, while the doves argue there's room for additional loosening. Guess what? These guys will now have to publicly argue this point with rookies who have no track record and few public comments on monetary minutiae. Doesn't bode well for setting the right tone. Let's not sugarcoat this, by the time incoming officials engage openly with inflation-fighting veterans, it may be too late. March's likely rate cuts may come on autopilot, but as the seasons shift to spring, you can bet doves and hawks will be wrangling over whether deeper cuts are necessary or whether the focus should shift to gradual fiscal tightening before solidifying any new economic growth figures. The stakes are high. Like we said at the start, this ECB personnel shakeup is a big deal. It's probably the most disruptive political and economic personnel event in the last 5 years. And even if the ECB manages to tough it out this year, the real storm still looms ominously in 2026-2027. Those years will make this shakeup look like a rehearsal. Christine Lagarde's term as president will end, signaling monumental upheaval for EU markets. Other executives, like chief economist Philip Lane, whose careful math holds this fragile ship together, and Isabel Schnabel, arguably the most influential new voice at the ECB, will also be stepping aside. God help Europe if they fumble those replacements. Folks, it's peak uncertainty. We've got rookies entering the ECB Governing Council at the worst imaginable time. Inflation refusing to come down to that magic 2% target everyone loves to preach about. Stagnant growth, with the economy clocking zero gains in the end of 2024. Trade war threats with the US, a country that's already pushing hard on Europe's weakest points. When we add it all up, the writing on the wall doesn't lie, Europe is heading towards turbulent waters, and this shakeup at the ECB won't calm the waters. It'll just turn the steering wheel over to captains who are still learning how to read the map. May the economy gods be with us. As always, don't forget to subscribe to Boss Economics World and hit the bell for more harsh truths about our economic landscape. We'll be watching this clown show at the ECB and letting you know when disaster strikes, and it looks like it will.